So good morning or afternoon, everyone. As the case may be, welcome to the annual general membership meeting of the American Discovery Trail Society. We're glad you're with us. One of the silver linings of the COVID pandemic has been our new Zoom culture. Used to be that this meeting would precede the weekend-long annual board meeting, and it would be in a different region of the country each year, which basically meant that, we would have a very few members who lived locally enough to where we were that year to come to the meeting. But the new Zoom way of doing things has allowed so many more members to be a part of this meeting that when we go back to having in-person board meetings, we will definitely continue to do this one virtually because it just works wonderfully well. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Carol Tomhave. I'm the administrator for the society. I keep track of all the memberships. I do the books. I send out items when they're ordered from our web store, etc. All of the administrative type duties. If you email info@discoverytrail.org or call the 800 number, I'm the person you get. I am the sole employee of the American Discovery Trail Society. Just a couple Zoom culture things. You might find that for this meeting, you will do better with speaker view rather than gallery view, because we will be having several speakers. At the end of the meeting, we'll have time for a Q&A. So then you could change to gallery if you wanted or not. And we do ask that you, if you haven't already, you mute yourself. That way, just as our various speakers proceed, we don't have to worry about dog barking or coughing fits or something like that, distracting them from what they're saying. Again, thank you for giving up a part of your weekend to come and be with us. We hope at the end of the meeting for our members that you will feel more informed and more invested in the American Discovery Trail Society. So I just need to share my screen again and bring up.
So I had talked to Lori this morning. I'm going to take work home.
So someone needs to mute. Please check and see if you're muted.
Colonoscopy for tomorrow or Monday. So, I'm just going to take the week off.
Hang on 1 second, everyone. Okay. All right. So at this point, I would just like to introduce our president, Eric Seaborg. Eric was the leader of the 3-person team who scouted the American Discovery Trail back in 1990. The American Hiking Society and Backpacker Magazine had jointly had the idea of a coast-to-coast trail and contacted hiking experts in each of the states that the trail would go through. And then Eric was part of the team that went through and scouted the trail initially and has been our president for several years and is the man. So Eric, take it away.
All right. Took a couple tries to get the unmute to come on. As Carol said, thank you for being here on a nice Saturday when you could be out on the trail, or if you're in the right time zone listening to Wait, Don't Tell Me. But I heard it already, so I can tell you the jokes. And for those people who were here last year, I'll apologize in advance for speaking of jokes, telling the same jokes all over again, but the board members who are here are already accustomed to that. So you can't hear anybody laugh at your jokes when they're all muted anyway, so it's a little embarrassing. So I think we put together a session that we hope is informative and entertaining and not too full of BS for you today. And your reward for sticking with it is that there's some pretty pictures at the end, some really outstanding photography from some hidden and lesser known places that might surprise you. If you have questions along the way, I think you can send them via comments if you didn't send them by email. And if I see something there that I can answer quickly at the end, I will, or we might wait until the last part of the meeting. As Carol said, I've been involved with the American Discovery Trail and the American Discovery Trail Society for a very long time. Back when the trail was conceived well, let me give you a little background about the trail. It was conceived because there was no coast to coast trail, and to fill this, so it was meant to fill that need, or as we like to say, to form a backbone of the national trail system. Because the trail does not follow a geographic feature like the Appalachian Trail or Pacific Crest trails do, it has challenges such as how do you deal with population centers? And we addressed this by going through cities. And the idea there was that we could add areas of cultural interest and historical interest, but also cities are built along rivers, and often this is where there are greenways, and it's actually an easy way to pass through. And there's often rail trails that are built in cities. American Discovery Trail was studied by the National Park Service to be a national scenic trail in the 1990s. That study found that the ADT did not qualify to be a national scenic trail because of the urban aspects, but the study team conceived of a new category of national discovery trail. To create a national discovery trail requires an amendment to the National Trail System Act, and Congress has not made that designation yet, but that will be the next presentation about our efforts on that. For many years, the American Discovery Trail has been a completed usable route, and we've had turn-by-turn directions for many years. We've had it mapped digitally and downloadable to a GPS, so people can follow it, and they have been following it for many years. In addition to being a hiking route, we also have a bicycle alternatives where a loaded bike is not practical on a single track or is prohibited on a single track trail or is prohibited in a wilderness area. And with just one or two additions, our bicycle alternates are going to work to go from the Atlantic, at least to Denver, and probably to near California. Word about the route, it's about 40% off-road. Off-road meaning single track trails, bike trails, greenways, and sidewalks. It's about 30% gravel roads, and it's about 30% paved roads. But many miles of those gravel roads may never be replaced by trails, nor need to be. In places like Nevada and rural Kansas, being on an unpaved road is at least as good as being on a trail. For through hikers or long distance travelers on the American Discovery Trail, the trail has challenges that other long distance trails don't. The number one being that we don't have the camping infrastructure that a lot of other trails do, and we would really like to develop more camping opportunities. Another challenge to the trail is our small budget and relatively small organization. Our biggest needs are money and members. We have about 1,000 members, and it's an interesting problem in trails. It's actually harder to attract members of a national group than it is to a local group. And we sort of struggle with that, but we're working on it. We have a small but growing budget. Our budget's like under $100,000 a year. And at this point, it's almost all consisting of individual donations. That's one of our weak spots is we haven't been very good at going out for getting grants and business donations. We just haven't had someone step up and do that on a long-term basis. But we get an amazing amount of work done by volunteers. I'm a volunteer myself. We have one person on staff part-time, and we depend on a structure of volunteer state coordinator.
Thing you mentioned was that you rely a lot on volunteers, and that you yourself are a volunteer.
Okay, okay. And did I say that the trail route is a collection of independent trails that are managed by local jurisdictions? And a lot of people can't figure out, well, what are you doing with that? But we get it. I mean, that's the way it works. We find local trails and we follow them and we go with the rules of the local trails. But we also help local groups in advocating for new trails, and just the existence of being a part of the American Discovery Trail has helped a lot of trails get funding in order to get funding for their trail. And in Iowa, being part of the ADT helps you score points on your grant request. And in Des Moines, every grant request that led to the creation of of some of the trails downtown has mentioned that they are being a part of the ADT. One of our main focuses now is trying to get signs up along the trail, and we had a bill pass Congress a couple of years ago, thanks to Peter Shetley, who's going to be on in a minute, requiring that federal land managers allow us to put up trails, and so that's led to lots of signage improvements so that people can actually find the trail. We're always working to improve the route. I'm struck that a trail is never quite done. I just saw something about the Appalachian Trail yesterday, that they've had a mile of it flooded by a beaver dam. And so you're always working to improve it. And in our board meeting that's going to follow this, we're going to be approving about 5 reroutes. That, there's like the Dark Island Trail in Nebraska that gets about 5.5 miles of new trail. There's the Rock Island Spur in the Kansas City, Missouri area. There is a very large reroute in southern Illinois for the bicycle route that gets us onto using the Tunnel Hill State Trail. That was as much as I need to say right now. So I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the National Discovery Trails Act. And I'll turn it over to Peter Shetley, who is the Maryland State Coordinator, but also our congressional liaison, and who has done just a ton of work on getting legislation through.
Okay, can I start?
You can, Pete.
Great. First, I want to compliment you, Eric, for that very nice, informative status report where we are and the history of it. This is great. I want to cover 3 quick points. One is what our proposed legislation does, what's in it, what's not in it, what some of the misunderstandings are. Second, where we are in this legislative process. And the third point I want to cover is what you can do to help. I'm glad that there's quite a number of folks interested in the American Discovery Trail that are listening in on it, and your help from outside is invaluable and very needed. So the first point, what the bill does. This is HR. HR stands for House of Representatives. HR 4878. All the bills get numbered as they're introduced. And so this is a very simple bill. It has the very same text as the bill in the previous session, 726, HR 726 from the 18 and 19 session. And all it basically does is, remember what Eric said, there was a study done by the National Park Service about what to do about this proposed American Discovery Trail. They spent 2 years studying this, and their conclusion was that, yes, it absolutely should be part of the US National Trail System, but it has to be a discovery trail. It cannot qualify as a wilderness scenic trail. It goes through too many urban areas, cities, downtowns. And it's not a historic trail because it was basically put together by people like Eric back in 1989 and 90. So it needs that new category, the Discovery Trail. And that's all it does. It puts the American Discovery Trail into the US National Trail System officially. That's all it does. It doesn't ask for any money. It doesn't ask for any appropriations. We're not asking for any funds. So all it does is complete that final step recommended by the National Park Service when they did their really important study back in the 90s, make us official. And we can talk later about how important that is and what the benefits are. But there's a misnomer because other very worthy groups like Rails to Trails or East Coast Greenway or others have a very different approach. Their approach is to seek funds and buy land and acquire land and then put up signs and trails. Ours is totally different. As Eric described it, our trail already exists. It's there. People are hiking it and using it every day. All we want to do is become official. So that's the end of my point one, what the bill does. It's really a very simple bill. And you can read the text of it, the entire text of it, if you go to congress.gov, congress.gov, that's the official website of the Congress. And then when that page pops up, there's a search box and just type in HR 4878, the number of the bill. And that's it. And then everything about that bill will pop up. The text, the status, the number of co-sponsors, where it is in the legislative process and so on. So congress.gov is the open door for you to get all this information. Now the legislative status, I have some great news. Our number of co-sponsors is at an all-time high and we've set a record. We're now up to 40. We just got another Congresswoman from California, Judy Chu, just a couple of days ago. So 40 is amazing. And when it was introduced originally by Mark DeSaulnier from California, from the Bay Area, the original co-sponsors was opposite parties. It was Jeff Fortenberry from Lincoln, Nebraska, a Republican. So this is important to know that this is a bipartisan bill, strongly supported by both parties. This isn't any extremist one-sided bill. This is bipartisan. And what happened was we reversed that sequence because Congressman Fortenberry from Nebraska had introduced a whole string of bills in past sessions as a Republican, but it never got through the system. And we figured with the Democrats in the majority at this point, let's have a Democratic introducer and a Republican co-sponsor. So that's how we ended up with Congressman DeSaulnier from California introducing it, and Jeff Fortenberry from Nebraska, a Republican, as the initial co-sponsor. The next step, we got co-sponsors at both ends of the trail. The western end in California, it was Jared Huffman, Congressman Jared Huffman. And in Delaware, it's Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. So, and then our 40 are from all across the country, many from California, Colorado, where the trail goes, but also a good number from throughout the country. So people outside of our 15 states that the trail transits do have a serious interest in the trail. We've got co-sponsors from New Jersey, 2 from Oregon, Virginia, a new one just came in from Tennessee, Steve Cohen from Memphis. So there's a number of folks from outside our route that are also interested. So that's a good example and evidence of how widespread the support is for this trail. Pennsylvania. Now, that was the good news. Now, the bad news is it's very difficult to get a bill passed in the Congress. The average rate of all the bills that are introduced, only about 5% make it all the way through to become public law. So it's a tough gauntlet that we have to go through. And we're just at the beginning of this. The next step, we hope, will soon be hearings. This is in the Natural Resources Committee in the House. We hope that they will have hearings this fall. And that's the next official step in the process. Then that committee will have to vote. They could amend it a little bit, or they have a markup, it's what it's called. And then it goes to the House floor. That's all way down the road. Another huge step down the road is we need a Senate companion bill, the same bill in the Senate. And we're talking to some senators and hope that they will introduce the same text, the very same bill in the Senate so that it goes through that process. So all of this has to be done by the end of next year, December 31 next year, because at the end of every 2 years, all the bills that haven't been passed into law die, just like 726 died. So we've got a deadline. This all has to be done in the next year and a few months. So that's the second point, the legislative status, and I'm happy to answer some questions at the end of this or later on, if you're interested. Now, my last point is what you can do and the important role that you play. And I want to stress this because the most important thing for a member of Congress is they want to know whether their local voters, their constituents, support the bill. When we try to contact the members of Congress and ask them to support, the first question I often get is, who in my district supports this? So that's where you come in. If you're in a district that the representative has already co-sponsored, that's great. And I strongly encourage you to send a short note of thanks. Thank the member of Congress for doing this. They get complaints all the time. Everybody criticizes their member of Congress for not doing something. And so little words of thanks are really welcome. And I encourage you to thank your member if they are one of the 40 that have already co-sponsored. If they're not, then please send them a letter, an email. Email is easier. Ask them to co-sponsor, no matter where you are in the country. Ask them to co-sponsor. Now, here's where an obstacle comes into the scene. The members of Congress are so flooded, they're absolutely drowning in email. I mean, they get 1,000 a day. It's impossible to manage. And so what they do is put up firewalls on their page, on their web page, that if you don't live in their district, you can't send them a message because they're drowning and they don't want any more messages from outside their district. How do you get around that? What you do is send an email, not to the member of Congress, but to one of their staff. So what you can do, easily just go Google and say, ask staffers for Congressman Betty Smith. And you'll get an answer that so-and-so Bill Jones is the chief of staff. So then you write an email to Bill Jones and then say, I want you to please tell your congressman to co-sponsor our bill. That's how you get around that firewall. And the email format for all the staffers, all 5,000 of them on the Hill, is very simple. It's the same format for everybody. First name, period, last name at mail.house.gov. So if you know that Bill Smith is the chief of staff to your congresswoman, you write Bill, period, Smith at mail.house.gov and then send your message. So I really encourage you to do that. Another thing you could do is that contact local groups, your city council, your local clubs, a chamber of commerce, a hiking group, a biking group. That's all phenomenal. If they contact the member of Congress and say, we, the Memphis Bicyclists organization, want you to do this, that has a lot of impact, much more impact than I writing from Maryland or somebody from way out of state. They want to hear from local groups. So you get your city council to pass a little resolution. It's often not that hard. The city of Cincinnati, city council encourages the congressman to support our bill. That has huge impact. What do you want to say? Keep it simple. You know, we encourage you to co-sponsor the bill. All it does is complete the National Park Service study And we're not asking for any money, no funds, no treasury appropriations. Make it simple, put it in your own words. Don't send a formatted letter. And remember that there's lots of arguments for it. The economic arguments, it brings economic growth to lots of districts. All the tourists, all the visitors and so on do that. So I really encourage you to do that. Another thing to remember is the vision of the American Discovery Trail, which is probably why many of you are supporting us and interested. Look a generation or two down the road and picture an American Discovery Trail that's active, that's well known, that has signs everywhere, and the public in the country are proud of this phenomenal trail that crosses the whole continent from the Atlantic to the Pacific and links hundreds of local trails, cultural sites, cities, and so on. It's like the Appalachian Trail today. It's majestic, but when it was started in the 20s and 30s, it wasn't easy to do. It looked like it was impossible, but those folks kept at it. And now we've got a phenomenal trail, a number of phenomenal trails in the US because of what people did 30, 40, 50 years ago. So that's the vision, and I think we can get there, but it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of time. And I thank you for your interest and your help in trying to get more support for this. So that concludes my section. And if there's some quick questions, I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, we can answer them, all the general questions, at the end of our meeting today.
I think we need to save the questions for the end, Peter.
Okay,
It's going
fine.
to be the easiest, but hang
Yeah,
in there.
thanks for that, Peter. Thanks for that presentation. And I will point out that you can find a lot of this information on our website. And if you want to follow up, if you send a message to info@discovery.org, Carol can hook you up with, a lot of what you need to know. So the next item on the agenda is an award that will be, so I'll just turn it over to Laurel Foote, who is the newsletter editor, who is an early American Discovery Trail traveler and who's been involved with us for a long time. So Laurel, have you had time to unmute yourself and ready to talk?
I think Carol made a point of making sure I was unmuted, so thank you very much. And yeah, I get to do the fun part of the meeting because it's all positive. And each year, it's my pleasure to be able to present the Happy Feet Award to somebody who has made outstanding contributions to the American Discovery Trail Society. And as it says on the Happy Feet Award plaque, here's the plaque. This is awarded to the volunteer whose actions, enthusiasm, and commitment to the American Discovery Trail serve as an inspiration to others. So now I want to mention that this year's recipient of the award is really an exemplary model of all those criteria that we have listed. And this year's award winner is Stephen Hill. And I want to give you a little bit of background about everything that Stephen has done to become this year's recipient. And so, oh yeah, there's a close-up that Carol has put in of what the award is going to look like that is in the process of being shipped to Stephen in Colorado. So Stephen became the state coordinator for Colorado in 2018. And when he did, he jumped in with both feet. I'll give you some background of what Stephen has done for the trail and how he approaches his position. Steve was a Marine following high school, and his last tour of duty was as a recruiter for them. There he was trained in the science and art of selling a product. After he left the military, he moved to Colorado. He worked in a number of various positions, ending up with the Colorado Department of Parks and Wildlife until his recent retirement. In his spare time, Steve made a goal for himself to hike every trail in Colorado. And that's a really big goal. So I'm guessing that he's still working on it. But at any rate, then he started a Facebook page called Hiking Colorado. And that eventually attracted more than 71,000 followers. In the process of his job and his outside interests, Steve was able to acquire the skills and relationships to work for the American Discovery Trails regional land managers to further our efforts. And more specifically, he has successfully engaged the Colorado U.S. Representative Joe Neguse, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, to become a co-sponsor of our House Bill 4878 that Peter was just talking about, and the one that makes the American Discovery Trail an official part of the U.S. National Trail System. This is especially important because Representative Neguse is chair of the Public Land Subcommittee of the Natural Resources Committee. Steve was able to gain permission with local officials to get new or improved ADT signage on 37 various trails in Colorado, which are part of the ADT. And in order to accomplish this, he developed a book on how to approach land managers. And he has shared that with the other people on the other state coordinators and people on the board. His booklet included scouting the trail, taking photographs of every trailhead, researching the trail's website, finding various maps of the trail, and using the land manager's maps when he briefed them about where we wanted our signage, and providing each land manager with a binder that he had made up with information about the American Discovery Trail and their part in it. And so through a combination of planning, persistence, and tactical strategies, he has made huge accomplishments in getting land managers to agree to sign their affiliated trails with ADT markers. Also, while he is scouting the trails in Colorado, Steve is always looking for trail reroutes that might be better alternatives that he passes on to our trail committee to review. And if it passes the test, then they get rerouted in that area. He has raised awareness of the ADT in Colorado by manning booths at festivals, and he has written a number of articles that you may have seen in the American Discovery newsletter on hiking related issues. So as a thank you for all your efforts, the American Discovery Trail is happy to present this year's Happy Feet Award to Stephen Hill. Clap, clap, clap.
Speech.
I wasn't expecting that at all.
Well,
Thank
it's
you.
well deserved.
I'm not good at giving speeches, so thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
About Steve's work. This is from the heart. I really mean this. I've never met, well, I have met Steve, but don't get to see him very often. And, not only has he done all that work, for his state of Colorado, but he has truly inspired me to do more than I probably would have done. I'm a fairly new state coordinator, but, I said, well, if that guy over there, and this is before I really knew him, that guy over there in Colorado can do all that stuff, I can certainly do more. And so, I've been working harder than I would have worked if it wasn't for the bar. He set a pretty big bar. And I think to other state coordinators too, it just seems like to me that there's more going on out there in the field than there has been in the past. So thanks a lot, Steve, for not only your work, but your inspiration and your guidance as to how to do it with that booklet.
Thank you.
Let me also, this is Pete Shutley. Let me also add something to compliment Steve. He's done a phenomenal job in contacting and persuading the members of Congress from Colorado. There were some that were fairly easy to get, like Diana DeGette from Denver. But there's also some very tough ones that just won't budge on this when they're very conservative positions. And Steve kept trying and kept working at this and kept at it. And his persistence in trying to do that part of his job in Colorado is phenomenal. And I really compliment them, and it's why this award is well deserved. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, but one of the things I love about Steve is that, you know, all he says here is thank you, and you think, boy, what a man of few words, which he is, but then you get some of his emails and instructions on how to do things and what he's done, and it's like, wow, he actually has got quite a way with words there too, and you can understand how it is that he talks these people into putting up the signs on the of the American Discovery Trail. All right, now we actually have the one thing of business that we are required to have a annual meeting of the membership in order to do, and that is the election of members of the board of directors. And so the chair of the nominating committee is Mitch Barloga, the in Northern Indiana state coordinator, and I'll turn it over to Mitch.
Thank you, Eric. Do we, yes, do we have a list of the,
We do.
okay, you're getting that? Okay, very good. So while this is coming on board, we do have a board of directors here that you see on the screen now. I believe their bio was sent out previously for each one of these individuals. I do want to thank the members of the committee for engaging with these people, particularly Eric, on making sure that they were interested in continuing on with the board. And we do thank all of them for their willingness to volunteer. As you see from this list, I am on the top because that's just the way it is alphabetically. But otherwise, we have many people on this list are continuing members, and they are of various roles with the organization. Some are just board members, some are actually state coordinators like myself. And so we want to thank all of them for continuing forward here. We do have two new members that I would like to highlight. First would be Sharon Weekly. Sharon has been really an all-star for us when it comes to social media presence, and has been helping us keep our Facebook page updated regularly, and she's been doing so on her own behalf for several years. And so it's great to see that she is willing to take the jump into the board and willing to accept that role. The other individual is Brad Merrow. Brad, for some that may not know, he actually walked the entire American Discovery Trail, both northern and southern legs, which is kind of a rare feat. I think only a couple dozen people have done that. He did that between 2017 and 19, and he's worked with us on some video productions and introductory video that we have just executed a contract with. So that is not going to be an issue of conflict. And going forward, he is looking to continue his video work, however, in a way that he will find outside sponsorship. And he, of course, being a board member, he will recuse himself of any request of this organization regarding any funding, but he definitely wants to help out where he can. He is a passionate supporter of the ADT. And with that said, I guess I will give it back to Eric for any questions or any comments on the slate.
Okay, well, I think we can put it to a vote, and that's a little hard to do in a Zoom meeting, but what I would suggest is, does everybody see, if they put their cursor down towards the bottom, they'll see a thing that says reactions. And I think anybody, I'm going to ask people who want to vote aye in a second, and I will say that if you can click on any kind of reaction there, we will, especially the raise hand, we'll take that as an aye vote.
Just one point of clarification, Eric, that I thought the members on the meeting might not have been aware. The list that you saw is not the entire board. There are certain members of the board whose 2-year term is always renewable in even numbered years, and then there are others that are renewable in odd numbered years. So these are the people who are renewable in odd numbered years or are new to the board that we're currently voting on. That's why you didn't see Eric and Peter that you had already heard from on that list, and others.
I'm not even sure how to count because.
I see, we have, yes, so the reactions are still coming in. Go ahead and vote. Everyone on the call is welcome to vote. So far, I see 23. 23 yays. And I think actually as folks turn it back off, then it goes away. So the number keeps changing.
Oh, okay. All right, well, we'll take 23 as a good number. And I'll lower my hand. And if people can lower their hands as well.
Yeah.
See, there are more coming in. So it actually was more than 23 because as they lower them, then it gets replaced. So
Okay.
I think we can say that's acclamation.
Okay, when I see all the hands gone away. All right, now we'll give it a, now, well, I see one that hasn't gone away, so we will just not worry about that. But anybody who wants to vote no, now is your chance to raise your hand as a vote no. All right, I'm seeing no contrarians, so as Carol said, I think we can take that as acclamation. So thank you. Thanks for being here and thanks for your vote. And now we'll go back to Carol for the feature.
You know, actually, I saw one person whose hand is up, but maybe that was a leftover. So
Yeah, I see one.
I think Santos is a leftover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was up the whole time.
Yeah, that was a leftover. I'm not sure how to take that back down now.
All right, Carol?
Okay, so last but not least, certainly on our meeting today is our special presentation, which I believe will be a visual and oral treat for all of us. We found our presenter when he started posting all these great photos on our Facebook group page. This was just when COVID was hitting and everyone was discouraging long distance hikes, but this guy was hiking little sections of the American Discovery Trail from home and having a great time. His name is Keith Gelhausen, and he is the Executive Director of Human Resources and Institutional Equity at the University of Evansville, which interestingly enough is in Evansville, Indiana. But he also finds interesting things to do because he has kayaked the entire 500-mile length of the Wabash River, and he helps lead his university's venturing crew, guiding students on backpacking and other adventure trips. And today he is joining us from somewhere out on a kayaking trip, but he sent his slides ahead of time. So even if he gets caught in a hydraulic somewhere, we will still get to see his pictures. However, I think we're safe because I can see Keith. So welcome, Keith, and thank you so much for being willing to share with us today. Let me just get your presentation ready here.
Can you and others hear me?
I can.
Wonderful. Carol's gonna advance through the first few slides for me. And I've been put on a hard 15 to 20 minute time limit. Otherwise, the tens of thousands of photos and numerous stories that I have of my hiking of the trail for the last couple of years would certainly take much longer than that. So Carol, I certainly do appreciate it. And yes, I'm enjoying a beautiful autumn day here in northern Indiana on the west fork of the White River. I'm attempting to paddle the navigable length of that river, which is about 300 miles. So looking forward to that over the next year or two. If you want to go on to the next slide. So as Carol mentioned, I am from Evansville, Indiana. And my home is located just 3 miles from the trail. I have camped and hiked all over Indiana and the Midwest in my lifetime and have seen signs off and on for the trail, but never seriously entertained hiking a significant portion of it. Actually beginning in the winter of 2018-19, I hiked a small section of the River to River Trail, which is in Southern Illinois, and continued hiking the rest of that trail across Southern Illinois in early 2020. The River to River Trail is part of the American Discovery Trail, so certainly became a little bit more familiarized with it as I made that hiking attempt. My plan for the spring of 2020 was to continue my section hiking of the Appalachian Trail that I've been doing for the last several years. But as was just mentioned, there was, we can't really close a trail, but certainly on the Appalachian Trail, there were numerous shelters and trailheads and things like that that were closed. So I did not want to lose the opportunity of some scheduling flexibility with my job to not go on an outdoor adventure. Plus, I felt it was important for my own mental health to spend some time outdoors. So seeing that I had just completed the River to River Trail and seeing how close the American Discovery Trail goes past my home, I just started hiking east toward home. And when I got to home, I just kept on hiking and ended up hiking last year to Cincinnati, and then returned this year to the trail to hike westbound to St. Louis. If you can go ahead onto the next slide. There are many folks on this Zoom who I presume have hiked the entirety of the American Discovery Trail or large portions of it. So what I'm going to say here probably doesn't come as a surprise to many of you. There are lots of parts of the trail that aren't the most fascinating. A lot of gravel road, a lot of greenway, a lot of blacktop, especially through Indiana where I'm from. But that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of natural beauty and that there isn't a lot of history and little things that we can see. The fact is the American Discovery Trail goes all the way across the Midwest, and except for, say, the Appalachian Mountains east, Rocky Mountains then to the west, there's a lot of terrain that I suspect is much like we have here in Indiana. So it's really incumbent on a hiker like me to find those little things and not just a bird, a butterfly, a bee, but a sign to a unique point of view, something of interest, a historical marker that may not exactly be right on the trail as Bob's done a great job of marking on his GPS files, but I kind of viewed it as my own American discovery. So I used the trail almost as a starting point. And if I saw that the route went through something that maybe wasn't quite as interesting, I used Google Maps, I used the GPS files and just my own eyes and ears to make, with slight adjustments, my own route for my own experience. And as a section hiker, because I had my car with me, or at least I had a family member in some cases that was shuttling me, it did provide me with some opportunities to explore areas just a little bit beyond the trail that I thought were interesting. And I'll share a few of those in the slideshow. On to the next slide. So I think this, whoops.
I was just making sure.
Speaking of spots just a little bit beyond the trail, this is Burden Falls and Shawnee National Forest. Again, not part of the official trail, but close enough that I wanted to make it part of my section hiking experience as I passed through the area. But I think this quote does a good job of explaining the approach that I think one needs to have when hiking large segments of the American Discovery Trail, especially through the Midwest. Again, it's not those necessarily big mountain vistas, but there is just so many interesting things to see. So we're going to take the next 13 to 15 minutes to cycle through a series of photos that I've taken. I've got them set up to rotate every 6 to 10 seconds. So I'm going to do my best to keep up. And if I don't, then we'll just go to the next one and talk a little bit about that.
Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So this is me at the very beginning of the River to River Trail. Again, this little section was not part of the ADT, but it was the beginning of my journey. That's more than 6 seconds. I'm not sure, Carol, if that's.
Yeah, they're not advancing. I'm going to just do it manually.
Okay, well, good. We'll get through it as best we can then. Here's an interesting rest stop along the trail. I thought it made for a great photo, but I didn't sit on it. Garden of the Gods, maybe a quarter mile from the actual trail route. A lot of water in Southern Illinois. My favorite campsite in Lost Creek Canyon. And then Indian Kitchen and Lost Creek itself in Southern Illinois. A lot of mud bogs and mud pits, some up to my knees and beyond that I had to hike through. And I think in the next slide, you can see what it looks like when you get through one of those. Trigg Fire Tower, Lookout Tower, a great place to watch the sunset and a nice place to set up a tent nearby. Boot Ranch, every fence post on this ranch has an old cowboy boot on top of it. Someone mentioned a reroute of the bicycle route for the Tunnel Hill Trail. So this is part of my shuttling. I shuttled myself in this section with my bike. So I made sure to experience the Tunnel Hill Trail, some large tunnels. This is, I think, the Breeden Trestle, the largest trestle, I think, in Illinois. It just beautiful views on top of the trestles as well that you'll see in the next photo, which actually is just off the American Discovery Trail. Pretty common view there of Forest Road that I hiked along, sunrise at Dutchman's Lake. And then I think a waterfall, one of several near Dutchman's Lake. Again, not exactly on the trail, but I did a walk around the lake and explored and discovered those and made it my journey. This was taken at Fern Cliff. Again, a lot of water that I hiked through. Fern Cliff State Park. A waterfall with an interesting perspective looking down with the stream going out to the distance at Fern Cliff State Park. A spot that's not on the trail, but I drove to as part of my section hiking experience, Metropolis, Illinois, home of Superman. So that was kind of fun. Borks Falls in Shawnee National Forest, gorgeous little spot. Tons of waterfalls in that area. And then I think the next one is Panther Den, one of my all-time favorite places to go camping, hiking, and paddling. This is Hidasta Lodge, built by an old college outdoor club. This is one of the best places to stay on the trail. Giant City State Park, stay in the lodge and get the fried chicken. And it is right on the trail. This is the lookout tower at Giant City State Park as well. It's a gorgeous area. This is Makanda, Illinois, one of the little quirky towns along the trail. Great place to get some coffee and see some interesting, funky art that's been repurposed. This is right on the trail, the root beer stand in a little town. If you're a fan of taxidermy and root beer, this is your place. This is maybe a quarter-mile off the trail. It's called the Bald Knob Cross of Peace. It's like a 100-foot tall, ginormous cross that you can see. Great place to watch the sunrise. Always a fan of running into puppies and cats. Just saw a cat here as I was getting ready to go kayaking. Hutchins Creek, beautiful clear water there. This is Inspiration Point, beautiful overlook looking out into the Mississippi River Valley. And off to the left there is a swamp that has Snake Road. So that's one of 30 plus cottonmouths I saw that day right next to the trail. And there I was at what I thought was the end of my 170-mile journey that turned into a 670-mile journey. So then I started hiking toward town. This is one I would suggest as a reroute. Instead of taking gravel and pavement, I hiked through this beautiful little area with all these rock formations at Rimrock and taking the Beaver Trail along these beautiful streams to Pounds Hollow. And then on to Shawneetown, Illinois, all kinds of old structures like this grain silo. It's seen better days. And now back into my home state. One of few legible trail signs. Definitely get the GPS file and use that on your phone or GPS. There's lots of signage that I saw on my journey, but not a whole lot of it was new. This is the Upside Down House in Burdett Park, the LST 325 Evansville Riverfront. What an awesome trail that you get to go play at a kitty cat cafe and have a beer. You get to see museums like the Evansville Museum, all part of my ADT journey. Historical homes that you'll see on the next slide at the Wrights Home Museum, all within a quarter mile or less. Fledgling pileated woodpeckers at Angel Mounds Historic Site. And then on the next slide is Angel Mounds itself, a prehistoric area established by Native Americans many, many years ago. That's very interesting to see. I think this was part of the route at one point in time, because I did see some old trail signs at Scales Lake. So I made it my own route, and that turned out great. I saw so many historic cemeteries, pioneer cemeteries, some dating back to the 1700s. There's a rich history of Abraham Lincoln and his boyhood home in the area, so got to explore many of those spots along the way. This is a National Park Service property here. You get to go through Santa Claus, Indiana as part of the trail. So I made it a point to see how many Santa Claus statues I could find. If you've got a day to kill on the trail, right on the trail is an amusement park, Holiday World. St. Meinrad Arch Abbey, a gorgeous spot with all kinds of religious monuments and statues and places of prayer and worship. Even if you're not all that religious or Catholic, it's still a really cool place and very peaceful. Right off the trail was an antique steam engine barn, so got to see some of those. And at that same farm, there were a whole bunch of free-ranging guinea hens and just kind of hanging out on the road and the trail. So that's not something you would normally see on pretty much any other trail I can think of. Also right off the trail, but it's not signed, is St. Joseph Holy Family. So this guy's turned his property into this gorgeous little spot, pretty menacing looking black vulture. I didn't get much trail magic on the trail, but in one case, I bumped into the owner of a Dairy Queen, and he had some extra hot dogs. So he cooked up a hot dog for me and spent the night hanging out with him and his daughter at a pretty awesome campsite on the Two Lakes Loop Trail in Hoosier National Forest. This is Tipsaw Lake. Again, just gorgeous streams that nothing hard to hike through, but you will get your feet wet. One of many birds that I saw, blue jay, near Americus, Indiana, next to the Ohio River. A monument to some Civil War soldiers that were killed on the Ohio River in that area. And this is, again, maybe a 1/10 of the mile from the trail. This is near a place called Artist Point in Indiana. Beautiful view of a bend in the river. This is right on the trail, the Overlook Restaurant. If I could do a whole slideshow just on the restaurants that I ate at along the trail. There's some amazing spots with beautiful views. So definitely one worth checking out. I kayaked a small length of the American Discovery Trail. So this is where I kayaked a portion of the Blue River instead of hiking through Obannon Woods State Park. And then in Obannon Woods State Park, saw some nice views, including this old iron bridge that goes over the river and a red-eared slider turtle. And then heading on, chipping sparrow, saw eagles, herons, red-tailed hawks, you name it. Lots of wildlife along the trail. One of my favorite towns, Corydon, Indiana, original state capital of Indiana. So all kinds of historical things to see there. This is one that took some extra effort and is not on the trail, but near it. And I made a point of finding it. It was a gravestone of one of the members of the Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery Trail. Heading into the Knobstone Trail here, the longest single track footpath in the state of Indiana, and the ADT includes part of it. So one of the few times that I got to go backpacking on the trail, but I wanted to make it as much of an experience as I could. So I cached some beer and some pizza and turned that backcountry campsite into a pretty darn good one. Lots of fire towers in Shawnee and Hoosier National Forest that I got to go climb up. Again, looking for the beauty in things. Pigs, wouldn't necessarily think of things that are beautiful or photograph worthy, but I enjoyed seeing pigs, cows, goats, chickens, you name it. Some of them were quite inquisitive and wanted to see me just as much as I wanted to see them. Lots of waterfalls in southeastern Indiana. This is on Harts Creek. This is a dark fishing spider that I saw next to the waterfall. Again, all right on or very, very close to the trail. Several waterfalls at Hanover College. That was definitely worth a little extra side hike to add on to my adventure. This is in Clifty Falls State Park. I think it's a banded water snake. And instead of hiking the road through the park, I decided to hike the stream. So I went down into the stream bed, saw tons of fossils, and got to hike right up to several of the waterfalls, including Big Clifty Falls. This is heading into Madison, Indiana, right next to the trail. But instead of hiking the trail, I took the stream, much better view, all kinds of historical structures, great, interesting architecture in Madison, including a really big fountain that I think was part of the World's Fair expedition. And I hiked through Madison on National Hamburger Day. So of course I had to stop at a hamburger diner and get me one. I believe this is a paper wasp. So I was always kind of looking for interesting things to take pictures of, and that certainly caught my eye. This is Indian Kentuck Creek. This is all road walking. I made a point to go creek stopping. Again, it looked like a beautiful spot, and it certainly was. A lot of Amish country that I went through in Indiana. So got to see them. They were just as interested in me as I think I was in them. All kinds of old barns and feed mills, grain silos that made for interesting subjects. This is one of those spots that I drove to on my way to and from the trail that was definitely worthwhile. Advantage of being a section hiker. This is a museum to the movie Hoosiers and the team that the movie was based on. So a lot of props from the movie. That was cool to see. On the trail itself through this county, you got to see tons of stone arch bridges, a memorial to a Revolutionary War battle, all kinds of butterflies and moths, and now into Ohio. William Henry Harrison's grave site, President of the United States. Never thought I'd get to take a ferry across a river as part of a hike, but that was a fun experience as I was closing in on Cincinnati. So got to zigzag across the river a couple times into the city, and then just kind of certainly made my own route through town as I just started exploring all kinds of things, hiking around, seeing where the Cincinnati Reds play, and the buskers playing on the riverfront. All kinds of gardens and sculptures to check out. The National Steamboat Museum right on the trail in the downtown riverfront area. A sign that wasn't, I don't think, actually on the route, but I just kind of discovered it, of the American Discovery Trail. And a couple of the 150 plus large murals throughout town that I just wandered around taking pictures of. And then up to Eden Park for what I thought was the end of my journey, and at least it was, for last year, with a really awesome river overlook view in Eden Park. And I think we have just a few photos left of my journey that I had earlier this year as I hiked towards St. Louis. So this is a really funky place. This guy is open and available to serve as an informal hostel along the trail in Southern Illinois, Chester, Illinois, the home of Popeye the Sailor Man. Tons of sculptures in that little town. A food truck in virtually the middle of nowhere in a little bitty town in Illinois that was a nice surprise. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's Fort de Chartres in Illinois, an old French fort from the early 1700s. I did not like the route that went along farmer fields and river bottoms, so I made my own way up on bluffs near the river bottoms and had some really awesome views of the scenery up there with streams and stone archways, bed and breakfasts, etc. And then into St. Louis at the Arch, and very near the trail, I decided to take a detour and visit the St. Louis Botanical Gardens. So enjoyed spending half a day just wandering around and seeing some beautiful sights there. And then more recently, this fall, once we get to it, I went to the City Museum, which is only 8 blocks away from the American Discovery Trail. It's like an overgrown, grown-up sized playground. It has 10-story slides. Those are slides that you can go down, things to climb on. There are just as many adults as there are kids checking all these things out, having a good time and laughing, and it's definitely worth an extra side trip if you can afford to spend a day or two as you're hiking through and exploring the American Discovery Trail there. So that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for bearing with me.
I had a question. Thank you very much for that presentation. It's, you know, if you can't go out there, the next best thing is to have somebody like you curate the best views. So thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I'm just curious from an equipment standpoint, how do you, what do you use for walking through that mud and that water? Sounds like you did a lot of that.
There's always a debate in long distance hiking community about waterproof boots or trail runners or switching out into Crocs or sandals or something. I wear trail runners and want to make sure that I follow leave no trace. So I am hiking through the water and directly through the mud, not going around those mud pits. So a good pair of trail runners and a pair of trekking poles and 10 feet or so of hiking on the other side of that stream or mud puddle. And for the most part, the worst of it has been pushed out of my shoes and another hour or so, and it's more or less dry.
Any other questions for Keith? Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
You said you went about almost 700 miles. How long were you out on the trail? At different times? Cumulative.
I counted it at one time. I think on average, I hiked 14, 15 miles a day. So I don't know, 35, 45 days, something like that.
What was the most impressive part of the trail that you noticed during that trek?
Again, I'm an Appalachian Trail section hiker and have done a lot of hiking and paddling and places with just these big, grandiose views. And I just enjoyed the experience of adventure and natural beauty and history in my part of the country. And seeing so many things that I had no idea about existed that most people never get to see as well.
Thank you.
I have a question, Keith. First, I want to thank you very much. That was very interesting. My question is overnight camping. One of the problems we have in Maryland and Delaware and in further east is there are no campgrounds. There's not official places to stay overnight other than stealth camping in some farmers' fields. My question is, was that a problem in your areas in Illinois, Indiana, and so on, or how did you solve that problem?
Since most of my time was during the pandemic and I wanted to be as respectful as I could to the ADT Society's guidance on trail closure, virtually all of my journey, except for a few exceptions, was day hiking, which was a lot easier as I got closer to home, but it became much harder when it was 2 to 3+ hours each way every day. I did find a number of cabins, bed and breakfast, those kinds of things. As I hiked through both Hoosier and Shawnee, that there are campsites there. But to your point, when you're hiking through private property owned by farmers, hiking through large cities, that is, I could understand if you were through hiking, a very significant challenge. I've certainly done my share of stealth camping. That always makes me nervous. As a matter of fact, I just got permission from the property owner where I'm putting in for my kayaking trip today. So I think if I were to do a through hiking attempt on the ADT, I'm not a hammock camper. but I would probably think about doing that because I think it provides a little bit more flexibility in where you can stealth camp. But I can understand that that would be a challenge. And I would think a through hiker, that's probably the biggest challenge of them all, is figuring out on the route, on Google Maps, et cetera, where the heck it is that you can pitch a tent or a hammock, because that is a challenge. And I saw a question from Bill in the chat about the River to River Trail Society honor roll. I think, Bill, I actually did get in touch with you. You had outreached once you saw that I had completed that trail last year. And I thought I had submitted my information, but by all means, reach out to me separately from this, and I'm happy to work with you on that.
Well, Keith, thank you so very much for being willing to do this, especially on a weekend when you are otherwise engaged, and for all the work you did to bring together all your gorgeous photos for us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I hope you have fabulous weather and a great time on your kayaking trip. Did anyone have any questions for Eric or anyone else regarding anything on today's meeting before we get ready to close the Zoom?
Well, I'd like to say a little bit about the Mustang Discovery Ride, if I can take a few minutes.
Certainly, we do have our board meeting starting at 2, so we will need to be pretty quickly off, but yes, please, Lisa.
I'll be quick. So first of all, you know, we're getting front page news, America's Horse on America's Trail. Every place the girls are going, we're getting front page awareness, the journey across America, highlighting the American Discovery Trail, America's Horse on America's Trail. So the girls are doing amazing. I just sent Donna a video that we can't release on social media yet, but one of the film crews that came out to work with the girls was from under they were part of a foundation grant from Johns Hopkins University for their educational department, which is into doing education through film. Julianne Neal, and I can't find my how to do a chat or how to send a message, but Julianne Neal, who is the filmmaker on the what the documentary will be called 5,000 Miles, 5,000 Mustangs, but we have a docu-series called Mustang Discovery Ride, America's Horse on America's Trail, that will focus on each state and what we're finding as they ride along on each state, and interviewing Peter and Donna and all of we want to coordinate with all of the American Discovery Trail coordinators along the way so that we can get them added into the documentary. But this piece, it's a 5-minute piece that they put together, is absolutely beautiful from the Johns Hopkins people. So as soon as that can be released online, but we've got an amazing amount of stuff coming through, and Julianne has created an educational portion of this, that if the state coordinators can reach out to Julianne Neal, and Donna will help me figure out how to get you all the links. I'll just send everything in the email. She has an educational packet put together on how to reach out, to bring it into the classrooms, to bring it to the kids, on how to reach out to the state representatives. She's an educator, so that she has a program set up for grade school, middle school, high school education packet ready to go for each state. So we just need to get it out to each state coordinator that can also then outreach to each of their schools. And, you know, with help, if there's anybody that you all think we should reach out and connect with as we go across the country, because they're in West Virginia now. They made it through Delaware. They made it through Maryland. We had amazing outreach from people, and that's what it's starting to be. It's not just a documentary about the trail and the Mustang horses riding on the trail. It's a documentary now about the amazing people that they're meeting along the trail and the goodwill. It's made me believe again in all in humanity, kind of, because everyone is just so gracious along this trail. Like we just saw in that little video presentation, they're excited. So reach out to me or to Julianne and we will keep everybody in the loop. We'll get you the educational materials, because I really think the kids, and this happened with Wild Horse Annie, with getting Mustang horses back in the 70s, you know, to get that act passed through Congress. If we can get kids involved and get kids writing the congressmen and saying, hey, we want this trail, I just think it's an effort that all together. So that's my little spiel for now, but we're working it really hard. So for the American Discovery Trail, because the girls are having a blast now as they're going along. And so many people didn't know that this was really a trail. So the education that's happening now is great.
Yes, we definitely appreciate the awareness you guys are bringing to the American Discovery Trail. And Julianne did, she sent me a private chat message.
Oh, great. Okay.
Information about the educational materials. So
Great. And I will send you, Carol, where do I find that on my screen? There's nothing.
It is just to me.
Oh, okay. Because I want to send you the link of the new video from when the girls rode off the beach in Delaware. So there's one with they're with a choir that is inner city girls out of Tennessee. So it's really a great piece. So
thank you.
That's what we're doing to help get the awareness out.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anything for the good of the order? Any questions?
A comment
Yes.
about the Happy Feet Award. It wasn't explained the significance of the Happy Feet Award. Its name came from Bill and Laurie's Foot's trail name, which was Happy Feet. And Bill and Laurie were the first to go coast to coast on the American Discovery Trail, not only for their own benefit, but they recorded the details of the entire route, and it was their data books became first available to the public to allow people to actually get out on the Discovery Trail and use it. So it's to their tribute that the Happy Feet Award is presented today.
Yes, thank you, Reese. Eric, any last words?
Thank you, Reese.
My last words are thank you for being here. If you have any time or interest in volunteering in any way, you could raise your hand now, or you could send a message to Carol, and we'll probably send a follow-up message saying, you know, here are some of the things you can do. And if there's anything that we're not doing, you think we should be doing, if you have any suggestions. But most of all, I guess, thank you for your support of the trail, because it's because of members and supporters like you that the trail can exist, and we're doing all we can to make it the best trail that it can be. And that's only because we have supporters like you. So I just want to say thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Hope we'll see you at this meeting next year. Board and state coordinators, see you at 2. Go grab a sandwich. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.